All right, I'm going to call the Thursday, October 30th, 2025 work session to order. First up are citizens' comments. During the work session, we only have one opportunity for citizen comments right here at the beginning. For those who wish to call in, the local number is 907-486-3231. Toll-free number is 1-855-492-9202. Please turn off any listening devices to prevent any feedback. For those in the room who wish to speak under citizen comments, please come to the podium and sign in. Turn on the microphone and make sure the green light is on before speaking and speak directly into the mic. Please state your name for the record and address all remarks to the assembly as a body and not to any member thereof. So is there anybody here who would like to make comments? Anybody on the phone? Oh, we have one.
Would it be okay for the assembly if I email this to you?
Yes.
Okay, there's not enough copies.
Oh, okay.
My name is Terry Storch, and I heard recently from one of my former relatives. Storches have a ranch outside Llano, Texas, and so they sent me something from the Llano Police Department that was very upsetting to me. And I think a lot of people in Kodiak that I have showed it to are very concerned too. It's from Llano Police Department about a street drug that's worse than fentanyl. It's nitazene, a class of synthetic opioids. They're found to be more frequently in the illicit drug supply. And there's quite a bit in the article about nitazene versus fentanyl. The UN and their laboratory scientific service has done a study on it. Apparently it takes a lot more. I'm sorry, I have a hard time with that word. Naxodon, to counteract the drug, and just knowing that there were some gang members that had brought it into the United States during the past administration. I'm sure it may end up in Kodiak, and I would like to have as many people as possible know about it, because I feel like forewarned is forearmed, and I'm really hoping that Kodiak Area Mentor Program will have a lot more people coming there to try to learn how to prepare for this. I know in the past people have just felt like we got to have separation of church and state. There was an old movie, The Cross and the Switchblade, in which the most dangerous young street gang president, Nicky Cruz. He was labeled that by the NYPD, was approached by David
Sorry, Ms.
Wilkerson.
Storch, can you wrap up in a few more seconds?
I'll try. Yeah, the NYPD gave up on the idea of separation of church and state when they saw that the most dangerous street gang president, Nicky Cruz, had completely converted, and an international substance abuse inpatient treatment program was born out of that. Is still ongoing today, and it's with the world's largest Protestant denomination, the Assemblies of God, and Nicky Cruz is now an evangelist with the Assembly of God. He's online. People can read his story, and I think that sergeant in the Cross and the Switchblade story, which was made into a major motion picture, said it all when he said that when gangs and drugs and those kind of things are destroying a city, separation of church and state becomes a rather ridiculous point. I think Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote the letter about separation of church and state, he was trying to protect the church from the state. And so I'm hoping that World Challenge, Adult and Teen Challenge, will be looked at as a possibility for treatment for our young addicts with this new drug that's showing up in the United States, more dangerous than fentanyl. I think it's critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to our first agenda item, which is to conduct interviews of our legal counsel applicants. Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly. The current Borough Attorney's contract will expire on November 30, 2025. A request for proposal went out on August 8, 2025, and the bids were returned on September 26. The Mayor and Assembly were asked to score the proposal. On October 16, 2025 regular meeting, the Assembly were given the tally of the score sheets they submitted. The Assembly gave direction to staff to invite the following firms for interview: Jermaine Donegan and Owens and Lanty, is that how? Yep, Bennett and Blumstein. And the attorneys are here. They're present for you to conduct the interview. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. I think we will start with the first one on the list, representative from Jermaine Donegan and Owens. It's Max, correct? Okay, have a seat up here, and our other applicants will take a seat out in the hallway. I think before we get into the questions, I'll just ask you to introduce yourself to the Assembly, and I think I'll be the one asking you all the questions, and then we'll get started.
There we go.
Green light.
I see green light. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Max Holmquist. I'm from Jermaine Donegan and Owens, JDO for short. Thank you for inviting us to come here and speak with you. JDO, just kind of an overview of our proposal. JDO is an Alaskan law firm. We've been in operation for almost 50 years. It's going to be 50 years next year. So we are a long-standing Alaska law firm. We serve a variety of clients across Alaska, and our attorneys have a broad range of practice areas But really, a significant part of what we do as a firm is to represent public entities, municipalities, school districts across the state of Alaska. That's really at the heart of what we do. And so as part of that, as we have a dedicated municipal law team of attorneys that work on municipal law issues and serve our municipal clients. We serve as borough and city attorneys for communities across the state. We also do project work for municipalities that have in-house legal counsel. We occasionally serve as hearing officers or advise boards and commissions. And so we do a variety of municipal law work across the state. And so I would say it's an important part of our practice, and that's what I dedicate my practice to is municipal law. So I serve as a borough attorney, and I also do projects for other municipalities across the state. I've served as a hearing officer and have worked in the area of municipal law for the entire time that I've been at JDO. Our guiding principle in the municipal practice is to always act in the public's best interest. And so we think that's critical really for everyone involved in municipal government, from elected officials, employees, and of course the borough attorney as well. And so we pride ourselves on giving you the right advice. Sometimes it may not be the popular advice. It may not be convenient necessarily or easy, but we think doing the right thing by the public is the most important thing. And so the other thing I'd like to highlight is that we think of the relationship between a municipality and their attorney as a team. So we want to be part of your team. We think that the representation of a municipal client works best when the attorney is integrated into the decision making. And of course, the assembly makes policy. We're going to be, we advise the assembly as elected officials, also the manager, the clerk, the staff. And so there are different issues that arise with those kind of different roles. But we think that to the extent that we are integrated and involved in the decision-making process, that we can help you both with the issues that you might recognize, but also those that you may not realize are going to pop up. And I think a valuable role of a municipal attorney is to catch those things, warn you about them, and make sure that you're aware of the issue so it doesn't creep up on you later. For our work for the borough, I would be your primary point of contact. And so the way that would work is, anytime you have questions or issues that arise or a need for our help, contact me directly. I'm going to respond to you quickly. And I can assess what the issue is, get an idea of what the timeline is going to be for a response, and of course what your needs are, whether that's going to be we need an answer by the meeting tonight, or we have a couple of weeks, take your time with it. We need you at the meeting. It's at 6:30, so I can kind of assess that and then see what the needs are going to be, to the extent that it's an area where we think that the borough could benefit from other attorneys in my firm. We've got I think 16 attorneys at JDO right now. I've put a few other folks on our proposal that specialize in areas that, or focus their practice on areas that are really relevant to municipalities. So I have Ryan Stewart, who is a JDO shareholder with a lot of experience in labor and employment law, and had previously worked at the municipality of Anchorage in the law department. Megan Sandone, a very experienced litigator, who's handled a lot of litigation matters for our municipal clients. And then Taylor McMahon, a senior attorney at JDO, who focuses on construction law, public contracting and procurement matters, and public sector construction, which I have found as a borough attorney has been very valuable to me when those issues arise for our clients. So we have got a full team. We've got a lot of resources available at our firm to meet all of your needs. We, I think, have proposed a very reasonable hourly rate, significantly lower than our standard rate. We do that because we know that financial times are not good for municipalities across the state right now, and we want to work with you, and we want to be able to make it work in that way. And so, so I know cost is an important issue, and we want to be responsive to that. So, thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Happy to answer any questions that you have about our proposal.
Okay, you've touched a little bit on several of the questions already, so I'll ask them, and if you want to expand or just on that, just let me know. So, just kind of building off of what you just said, why are you applying to be the Kodiak Island Borough attorney?
Well, this is right in our wheelhouse, Mr. Mayor. So we represent municipalities across Alaska, and we've kind of listed them out in our proposal. But I'm the borough attorney for Haines. We also represent the city of Accutan, the city of Homer. We have represented the city and borough of Wrangell, the city of Palmer, and we do a lot of projects or kind of miscellaneous work for a number of other municipalities across the state. So this is what we do. We have folks like me and some other attorneys in my office that do municipal law work. And so we, and like I said before, JDO is really dedicated to serving governmental clients, public entities. And so this seemed like a great opportunity to have, kind of continue on in that practice. And I think we would be a good fit for it.
Next, this is a pretty specific question. The borough belongs to the Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association. Does this association present a conflict for you?
No, I don't believe so. I'm not aware of any conflict.
Okay. All right, let's talk some more about your experience. How do you think your education and/or experience applies specifically to this position? For instance, can you talk about your experience with drafting legal documents like ordinances, contracts, easements?
Sure. Yeah, that's regular work that I've been doing for years at JDO, and so that's drafting ordinances, resolutions, contracts, leases, purchase and sale agreements, those sort of documents. Frankly, my job is made easier because we've done so much of that I've got a lot of examples and templates in our system of having done that kind of thing, and so it's something that we do very often, or if it's not drafting, it's revising, giving ideas, thinking about how things could be structured, and so in my role, kind of as an everyday borough attorney, I get that request very frequently, and I have a lot of experience in doing that, and I would say also to the extent that there's interest in revising whole sections of code. Or thinking about that more holistically rather than kind of piecemeal. We've done a lot of that sort of work for our clients, and I think could give you some pretty good ideas about how to approach that if there are areas of your code that you feel could use some work or updating.
Can you describe your experience litigating on behalf of a municipal government?
Sure. Yeah, we have done quite a bit of litigation on behalf of municipal governments. We have, so I personally have worked on a lot of litigation involving police personnel or police departments in other parts of the state. In Sitka and in Petersburg, in those instances are defending municipalities. We have also in Palmer. And then we have done public records litigation for a municipal client. I do, on the other side of the coin, I've done sales tax collection litigation, have ongoing litigation matters in that area. And so we are on the panel for the Alaska Public Risk Alliance, and so through that relationship, we defend municipalities across the state in a variety of litigation matters, everything from personal injury to constitutional claims, and a lot of things in between. So we do that work frequently, and I'll say we have an excellent team, staff, paralegals, associate attorneys, and partners that do a lot of litigation, and they're some of the, I feel like they're some of the best in the state. And so you'd be in really good hands to the extent that litigation is necessary, either from the plaintiff side or or to defend claims.
Have you ever been involved in the prosecution of misdemeanors on behalf of a local government?
I haven't actually done that. But I do have. Prior to coming to JDO, I worked in misdemeanor criminal defense, and so I'm familiar with criminal prosecution and everything that goes into that. So to the extent that you want the borough attorney to work on those matters, I think we could certainly handle that.
Okay.
And I would say too, sometimes those go to trial. Criminal cases go to trial more often than civil cases. And I've got a lot of trial experience from my past work. And so to the extent we need to come into court and try a case, I can handle that for you.
Let's see what else we have here. Your experience coordinating with outside counsel on municipal cases.
That happens fairly frequently. Particularly, I mean, I think more often JDO is the outside counsel, and there's an in-house attorney that comes to us to help them with litigation or a particular matter. We do not. I think I put this in the proposal. We don't have to go outside for much of the work because we've got such a broad range of experience among our attorneys and a broad range of practice areas that there just aren't very many situations where we say, I don't think we can handle that in-house. We've got to go out to someone else with it. But to the extent we need to, we've got a lot of relationships with firms throughout the state that we know are going to serve the borough, and if we need to do that, we can.
Great. Let's see. You've already spoken a little bit about your experience representing boroughs and other municipal entities. Can you discuss your experience relative to community size and class of government?
A variety. I am the borough attorney for Haines. Haines is smaller than Kodiak, although I will say my experience has been that even a smaller borough has a lot of the same issues that arise as a one that's larger in population. It just depends on, it really, the same issues arise maybe on a different scope or scale, but ultimately when you're thinking about how to deal with these issues, it's really the same thing. I've dealt with, we've handled home rule. We've done home rule. I know that we're not home rule here. City of Homer is first class city, and so we've got cities, boroughs, a variety of sizes from about the size of Kodiak or thereabout down to 1,000 people or less. So we kind of run the gamut, but like I say, a lot of the issues are similar, regardless of the size.
And so I imagine you have experience interpreting Title 29, with especially respect to second-class boroughs and the most recent updates, the most recent 2025 updates.
Right. We frequently are interpreting Title 29 as part of our practice. It's key. It's key to what we do, and so since my work has been as the borough attorney for Haines, that we haven't dealt with that. I haven't dealt with that particular update, but we work with we interpret Title 29 all the time, and it's important. It's obviously a key part of a municipal practice. So we've got a lot of experience doing that.
All right, just a couple more questions related to your experience. So the next one is about property taxation,
Okay.
And the issues as you see them for boroughs.
Well, I do. So I have worked on property tax collection and the property tax foreclosure process for boroughs, for a couple of different boroughs, and I think the issues that arise. You've got to, obviously comply with Title 29, what the limitations are, and, you know, in terms, but outside of that, there's policy decisions to be made about how, you know, exemptions are going to work and how that's going to affect the community and revenue and how to, you know, kind of how to allocate all of that. But I personally have experience working in property tax foreclosure. I've handled those matters in a couple of different clients, and also have advised clients on property tax ordinance related issues, code revisions, and you know, Title 29 compliance in terms of exemptions and so forth. So we've done a lot of that work.
And then your experience with land use law, and this one you can take a little while to think about it, because I'm going to ask you about if you have a particularly difficult land use issue that you managed hopefully to a successful outcome.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, it comes. When you represent the city of Homer, it comes with the territory. There's a gentleman there that is a well-known litigant. He represents himself, but he's very skilled, almost as skilled as most attorneys, I would say, in terms of litigating land use issues. And so there are a couple cases that are referenced in our proposal involving that gentleman that have gone basically at every level, from a planning commission to a board of adjustment to a superior court and the Alaska Supreme Court. There was one case in particular where where he challenged Homer's conditional use permitting process, and essentially his argument was, the city council has designed it this way. To require, to allow this sort of setback requirement by conditional use permit, and he argued you can't do that, and so we argued that on behalf of the city all the way up to the Alaska Supreme Court, and we won. We focused on the liberal construction of municipal powers, and which is in our state constitution and in Title 29. Which really allows a lot. I think the Alaska municipal law gives municipalities a lot of leeway in terms of how they want to do things within the confines of what's permissible in Title 29, and to the extent it's not expressly prohibited, and ordinarily you can do it. And so that was central to our argument, and prevailed in the Alaska Supreme Court there in a kind of reported case 2021, and then a couple of other additional cases since then about accessory dwelling units and other conditional use permitting issues. And so I personally have worked on a lot of those, and so I've got quite a bit of experience in that area in particular. And find it very interesting.
Okay. Let's talk about the role of the borough attorney. How do you perceive the role of the borough attorney? Like, what's the most important function of a municipal attorney?
I think that the municipal attorney, of course, needs to help the team, the elected officials and the manager, the clerk, and the staff, in making sure that we're complying with the law, complying with all the requirements under Alaska law. But I think it really goes beyond that. I think that responsibility goes into being able to understand what your client's goals are, being able to understand what the community needs are, and what needs to happen from point A to point B to point C to get there. And so that's, and it's also in the big picture, looking at those potential, not only thinking about potential areas of liability that we know about, but also some of those things that might not be so obvious, some potential pitfalls. those things are not necessarily apparent when you first look at an issue. I think the value of the municipal attorney is to do really both of those things. And so in the big picture, keeping the train on the tracks, keeping our clients out of trouble, and making sure that we're acting in the public's best interest.
And so what qualities do you possess that you feel make you a good borough attorney?
That's a good question. I really focus on details, and so I really try to dig down into an issue and think about it from a lot of different angles. And I was fortunate to work with Michael Gaddy. Michael Gaddy's another attorney at JDO that has decades of municipal law experience. I rely on him, still do. And fortunate that he's there. And that was something that was an approach that I learned from him, to think when you stop and look at an issue. There's a straightforward answer sometimes, but then there might be corollary issues or things that need to be considered from a variety of different angles that you might not have thought of. And how is that going to affect the advice to the client? And the path forward, whether that be in litigation or just different issues that can come up. And so I think that's beneficial to our clients, because sometimes there's a straightforward path and a simple answer, but things are not always so simple as they seem on the surface when it comes to legal issues. And so I think I kind of pride myself on making sure I cover all the bases.
This next one, I'll ask the assembly. I kind of feel like this one's already been asked and answered. I'm going to move on to number 10 there. Okay. No, that question was the relationship that you want to build with the assembly. Okay. So the next question, the Borough Assembly has 3 employees who report directly to them: the manager, the attorney, and the clerk. Based upon both council action and day-to-day requirements, the manager is often in need of legal services to carry out the direction of the assembly. It is also helpful that the attorney and the clerk coordinate as appropriate certain activities with each other. How would you make sure that your activities are coordinated with the other 2 employees to ensure that there's good communication among them and addressing the different priorities that they might have in a timely manner?
I think communication is key. I find thinking about how often I work with borough clerks for my municipal clients. Really more frequently than you might expect. I'm obviously working with the manager a lot. I have a close relationship with the manager and the clerk. And I think that the key is communication, to the extent that where issues arise. You're going to get in contact with me. I can respond quickly and just kind of assess, okay, what's the need here? Is this something needs to be dealt with, today, in the next couple of hours? Is this something I need to bring other folks in to help out with? What additional information do I need? And then working back and forth with the manager, the clerk, and the staff to say, okay, well, you've given me this. You've asked me a question, but actually I'm going to need X, Y, and Z in addition to what you've given me, so I can make sure I give you a complete answer. And so I think the coordination all depends on having a positive relationship, communicating frequently, and that's why I say that it really works best when the attorney is, to the greatest extent possible, integrated into that team. And so that way, as things are arising, I'm going to know what some of the needs are, and then when they pop up, on a Friday afternoon or on a weekend, or whenever that is, and I'll, give the staff my cell phone number if they need to reach me, and something happens on a weekend, because that happens in this type of practice. But Yeah, it is just making sure that we're clearly communicating and working together frequently enough that we kind of know what's out there and we can coordinate.
I think you kind of also answered this next one, but there might be something else you want to add. The borough manager, the borough clerk, and borough department heads, when they're authorized by the manager, sometimes they routinely will consult with the borough's legal counsel and sometimes need a quick response to a question. So how do you perceive the method of contact with you, and in what amount of time can we expect an initial response to the question?
So I'm gonna respond initially to a question from a client. I get a lot of them via email, but I do get a lot of phone calls too. I find most often it's via email. Max, what's the, this is an issue that's popped up, and my first question is going to be, okay, I've got it. I'm taking a look at it, and what do you think? What do you think the timeline is for that you're going to need for a response? Is this is this tomorrow morning? Is this next week? And just kind of get an idea, and then also that chance to first look at it is a way to kind of initially assess what the needs, what needs to happen from there. Do I need to involve other attorneys in my firm to take a look at it? Do I need to get additional information or documents from the staff to help them out with it? And then so then I can get back to them. I can say, okay, here's what I foresee in terms of, I'll have this back to you, early next week or tomorrow or whatever the need happens to be, and then we're on the same page. And so that way, I'm not going to leave the staff hanging in terms of they've sent something to me and they just kind of don't know when it's going to happen. I'll be back in touch with you quickly so you have an idea of what that's going to look like.
Great. All right, let's say there are two stereotypes. There's the sort of attorney who tends to tell clients what they should do, and then the sort of attorney who asks the client what they want to do and then figures out how they can do it, assuming it's legal, right? Which more closely characterizes you? Do you have any examples?
Yeah, I think that I am, to the greatest extent possible, I want to, because I'm not, the borough attorney doesn't create policy or direct policy and say I don't think our role is to say this is the way you should do things. I think we can advise a client to say, well, we have experience with this in other contexts or for other clients in other communities, and we've seen that it's been done this way and it works pretty well. You may want to consider that, but at the end of the day, I am not in the business of telling my clients it needs to be done this way. I don't think that's my role. I think my role is to really more frequently to help you find a way forward with what you want to do, assuming that we're, that it's going to be, that it's not going to be an issue of liability for the borough. It's not going to cause concerns with, compliance with the law, making sure we're on the right track. We don't, step on a landmine. And so I think if I'm choosing between those two, that's the one I'm gonna lean towards, with the caveat that sometimes you may say, oh, gosh darn, I wish the attorney didn't give me that advice. I don't really like that advice very much. But I'm gonna shoot you straight and say, this is what I think you can do. This is what I think you can't do. And excuse me. And so, but yeah, in a general sense, I want to help you, help the assembly and the staff kind of reach the goals that they're trying to reach.
Great. All right, we got a couple of scenarios for you that sometimes come up. Let's say two borough assembly members call your office and tell you that they want an ordinance to prohibit certain activities. And you know that the mayor and maybe one or two of the other assembly members don't favor such legislation. Mm-hmm. And you really don't know where the other members stand. What do you do?
As I said before, I think that the policy making side of things is really, that's your job. it's not my job to insert myself into policy discussions. I can, if I'm asked for my 2 cents about what's worked in different places, I can, in terms of how to structure code or something like that, I can do that. But at the end of the day, I think it probably works better if there is an orderly process as to how the attorney is engaged to help the assembly, whether that comes directly from the mayor, whether you speak about an issue as a body and then decide, okay, let's check with the attorney on this issue. And so I think it's best to not be involved in, from my perspective, not be involved in the policy discussion, but really just try to make sure that, to the extent requests are coming in from the assembly, that's from the assembly as a whole, or it's otherwise the kind of the orderly process and code for engaging the attorney. I realize issues are going to pop up sometimes where it's got to happen more quickly, and we deal with those situations. But in a general sense, I think that's a better way to handle it.
And the next one, let's say you receive a call from the public that one of the borough assembly members is getting favorable treatment from a contractor who regularly does some work for the borough but has no contracts pending.
Yeah, and so to the extent there's potentially a conflict of interest, I think that it is part of the attorney's role to raise that issue in a way and make sure that everyone's aware of, well, everyone in the sense of, I'd probably speak to the manager about it, or whoever I'm working with more consistently, to say, okay, well, I received this information. Here are my thoughts on it. I want to give it to you, and then and then work with the assembly and the manager as needed going forward to kind of resolve the issue. But I think it's of course, if there's an issue that is affecting the public's interest and is potentially an ethical dilemma or a conflict of interest, I think that needs to be brought forward and dealt with. And I think that's the best practice in general.
So the next question actually kind of, follows your statement. How do you then facilitate the discussion regarding legal issues as part of the decision-making process with the assembly?
Well, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. Sometimes, in my experience, sometimes the assembly will contact me through the mayor or or through I'll get a message from the clerk or the manager that says, okay, the assembly has this question. I'll do a memo, and the memo is attorney-client privileged unless you decide you want to release it as a body. So it arises that way sometimes. Other times it will be coming and advising the assembly at a meeting. And so I've done that both in public session and in executive session to deal with so we can kind of all be on the same page and all get an understanding of the issue. And so sometimes the situation calls for that. Sometimes it's something that's just kind of an issue that's out there and we want to get advice on it, and I can, and so I can send you a memo, I can send you a legal opinion, or whatever, however it works best for the assembly, I can do that.
Great. All right, just a couple more. The Kodiak Island Borough is required to have an attorney present at local court proceedings. Do you have an affiliation with a Kodiak law firm? And if not, could you establish one?
Yes,
Okay.
I don't have. Well, I shouldn't speak too soon because we have a pretty big firm, and we might have an association with the Kodiak law firm. As far as I'm aware, we don't, and certainly we would establish one because obviously it doesn't make sense for the borough attorney to fly from Anchorage to Kodiak on a regular basis every time we need to have a court appearance. And so, to the extent that's necessary, we would make sure to establish that relationship. At least I'd also want to look into whether the court would allow telephonic appearance for certain matters. So that way we can handle them for you without having to bring in outside counsel.
Okay, and let's see, last two. What do you anticipate will be the most difficult legal issue for the Kodiak Island Borough in the next 10 years? And how would you address it?
I don't know whether it's, whether you'd characterize it as a legal issue or not. But I'll say this: the funding shortfall now from the state is impacting our municipal clients, and I know it's from what I can gather, it's impacting Kodiak as well, and in a number of different ways. And so we are then put in the position of trying to determine potential funding sources for capital improvement projects, for example, infrastructure, economic development, and there are a lot of those needs out there that are being unmet because the state is not the partner that it once was in terms of funding, and so that involves looking creatively at federal funding options, and or other sources of of funding that are out there, and we frequently help our clients with working through that process, grant agreements, and compliance with all the federal requirements that come along with those, and so I foresee that that's going to be just because this funding issue does not seem to be going away. The revenue situation for the state does not have any, it doesn't have a significant prospect of improving in the near future anyway. It is, I see that as an issue that's going to come up with some frequency down the road, and we'll just need to get a little bit creative. And I think the more I'm always looking for opportunities to, and ideas to work through those issues with my clients.
Great. I'm going to ask the Assembly. I kind of feel like Max already answered number 18 with that response too. Okay. And that was a question just about the most pressing issue facing small municipalities today.
Oh, sure. It's unfortunate. It's pretty widespread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you for having me, and I hope to work with you in the future.
Great. There is one more question. Anything else, that we haven't asked about or talked about? Anything else you'd like to tell us about the service you could provide?
Yeah. I think what I'd want to emphasize is that we, serving municipal clients like the borough is kind of at the heart of what we do. That's always been a big part of what JDO has done for almost 50 years now. And so I'm happy that I get to be a part of that, being a shareholder at JDO, and I'm really proud of that practice. I think that we are well positioned to meet all of the borough's needs. We've got an excellent staff. We've got all the legal research capabilities that you could want, and frankly, the way we do that is quite efficient, and will end up saving you money down the road. And we have, as I said, I think what we can provide to you is at a very reasonable cost, and one that takes into account the prevailing financial situation among our municipal clients. And so, like I said, hope we get to work with you. I've enjoyed the opportunity to talk with you, and thank you again for having me.
All right, thank you. Let's see, we'll take a 5-minute break as we switch out applicants, and thanks again.
Yeah, thanks again, everybody.
one is on already. Press that push button right there.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back. Our next applicants up are from Landy, Bennett, and Bloomstein.
Close enough.
Okay.
Blumstein, very good.
Okay, all right. So we have a set of questions here, but first I'll just open it up for you to introduce yourselves personally to the assembly, and then we'll get started.
Very good. Should I go first? I'm at the big table here. Hi, my name is Leslie Need. I'm a partner at Landy Bennett Blumstein. And with me is
Jackson Morowski, I'm an associate.
Landy Bennett has 24 attorneys. We're based in Anchorage. We're a full-service civil law firm. Started in 1977, I believe, and we've been practicing municipal law since about that time. We're proud to be able to house enough services within our office that we consider ourselves to be full service, and most municipal clients don't need to refer out anything for subcontractors. We have a deep bench. Our proposal has included sort of the top Highline folks we think will be most involved if we get to do some work here for you at the Borough. But when specialty questions come up, we have folks who can handle tax, complex litigation, purchase and sale deals, all sorts of things. So we hope that we can fulfill your needs and do so efficiently and effectively. Our firm really values long-term relationships with our clients. I think that's something that's sort of special and unique to our office. So we hope to get to know you and hope that we could develop a very long-term partnership and that we would be happy to do the work for the Borough. So thanks for having us here.
All right, great, thanks. Okay, so let's get started. Why are you applying to be the Kodiak Island Borough Attorney?
Well, aside from the fishing, you know, the Borough here does a lot of things that sort of put together in one place a lot of the work that we handle for various clients across the state. We do work in the fisheries industry. We do work in real property. We, of course, have a portfolio for our municipal clients, but it's an exciting part of the state. We don't have a municipal client here on the island, and so it's appealing to us. It's a nice size, it appears to be a well-functioning organization, and so we're happy to be considered for that work.
Great. And let's see, the Borough belongs to the Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association. Does this association present a conflict for you or your firm?
No, I don't think so. We have in the past, we have worked with AML-JIA, and we're the attorneys for AML, but I don't believe that's going to pose a problem. We have other clients who I believe are also members.
Okay. All right, let's talk about your experience. How do you think your education and/or experience applies specifically to this position? I have a few things, so let's start off with your experience with drafting legal documents, ordinances, contracts, easements.
Yeah, we do that quite a bit. So I served as the city attorney for the city of Wasilla for a number of years and had a lot of firsthand experience doing that myself. Most recently, the municipal client I've been touching the most is the municipality of Anchorage. We are doing special project work for the assembly that has involved special litigation over subpoenas, which was interesting and fun, has evolved into more contract and ordinance and policy drafting work. And we do that for all of our clients. I'll talk just a little bit more than I promised, not to take up all the airtime. We'll let Jackson talk about what he does. The other portion of my work is general corporate. I work with nonprofits and cooperatives, including some utilities around the state. And so I'm doing a lot of contract drafting, leases, reviewing sort of complex agreements, and also a little bit of administrative work with RCA-related topics. So we spend a lot of time in the boardroom and at assembly meetings and city council meetings. I had one client refer to that as performance law, which I think is maybe accurate. And a lot of our skills in that area is just over time developing a good relationship with clients and sort of knowing how to anticipate what they might need at those meetings and helping them gear up for those. So, Jackson, we'll talk about what you do.
I think the light means it's on.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think Leslie pretty much covered, what she does, what the firm's capabilities overall in that area are. But I'll just add that, having sort of a deep bench of municipal attorneys and representing a number of municipalities around the state, boroughs, municipalities of every size. We have sort of the institutional knowledge for pretty much everything boroughs do. So, most likely in the course of what the Kodiak Island Borough does, we have someone at our firm who has seen it before. Or something close enough that we can dive in without really having to reinvent the wheel.
Cool. Your experience litigating on behalf of municipal governments.
Sure, we've done that too. I like to be able to litigate our own municipal clients' work. Sometimes that doesn't happen. As if you're an AML-JIA partner, sometimes we have panel counsel that gets assigned. But we've litigated extensively on behalf of our clients. Some of my recent work has included personnel or employment disputes that were filed in federal court or before one of the administrative bodies, prosecuting, litigating, planning and land use issues, both administrative within a municipality and then also in court, defending wrongful death or excessive force claims, other tort-related claims for municipalities. Some of our colleagues who aren't here were very involved in some PILT cases, some taxation cases. And one of our partners, Carl Kaufman, is the, excuse me, the remote seller sales tax person that works with AML on their policies, and he's our go-to tax guru, so we've handled tax matters and litigation matters related to tax for our clients as well.
And personally, for municipal clients, I have excessive force defense cases and code enforcement, that kind of thing. So sort of both prosecuting and defending litigation, and through every stage, from maybe an administrative hearing stage all the way up through Alaska Supreme Court.
And I might add, I'm just describing our municipal litigation. We have a litigation practice that's very vibrant, separate just from our municipal work. There's a few of us, Jackson and I included, that handle complex litigation for corporate clients, clients who are sideways on subsistence fishing violations, all sort of runs the gamut. We have a number of attorneys in-house. Our colleague Doug handles complex construction disputes. And so all those things probably tick boxes that you've thought about from one time or another. And we're pretty full service in the litigation area as well.
This next one, I'll ask the Assembly. I think this one has been kind of asked and answered about is just your experience with prosecution. Do you have experience coordinating with outside counsel? It sounds like you have a deep bench, as you said.
Yeah, we have, and we've done that for municipal clients. Sometimes, things have to get outsourced. It makes sense based on insurance requirements or what have you. We also routinely serve as outside counsel for companies and municipalities on special projects, so we're pretty familiar with coordinating. I've done some general counsel work for nonprofits and corporations where they don't have in-house attorneys, and then I've coordinated with those attorneys that have been assigned to handle their claims. So that's something we're very comfortable with. Yep.
And this is maybe a little bit outside of the question, but we also do routinely work within the insurance structure for, insured claims where, we need to adjust our rates or billing practices to match the insurer's requirements.
Sure. All right. Talk about your experience representing boroughs and other municipal entities, especially relative to community size, the class of government, interfacing with other governments.
Yeah, we represent the Northwest Arctic Borough, which I think is probably a similar or the most comparable example for what the Kodiak Island Borough experiences. And that's a contract our colleague Matt Mead, who's featured pretty heavily in the RFP, he's been working on that client for almost 20 years, I think. And so we have a long and steady relationship there. Our work with the Anchorage Assembly, I think, touches on a lot of similar issues that you all are facing. Those are probably for the larger sized clients or for the borough with the Northwest Arctic Borough. And then we have a number of municipal clients that are cities. We represent North Pole. We continue to do special projects for Wasilla. We represent a number of smaller municipalities in the YK Delta. And our general counsel for those organizations. I noticed we may not have put an exhaustive list of our current clients, but I'm happy to go through that, but it's kind of like just reading off the schedule. They range from the tip top of the state. We've been doing work for the North Slope Borough lately, down closer to southeast as well, so kind of run the gamut. Our attorney colleague, Joe Levesque, you might be familiar with his name. He's been around for a while. He represents a long list of mostly smaller cities, and then he and I serve as administrative hearing officers for a couple municipalities as well. So,
And Joe's also the primary attorney for the Bristol Bay Borough, just sort of across the pond, so
Yeah.
to speak.
So you have experience interpreting Title 29, especially, of course, the new updates this year, particularly with respect to second-class boroughs.
Yep, and we have done a lot of that second-class borough-specific work for the Northwest Arctic Borough. Yep.
Let's talk about your experience in, if you go a little bit further into property taxation and the issues that that you see in them for boroughs.
So Carl Kaufman and Matt especially have been working on property tax questions and have done some analysis and broader policy work, I think, both through AML and through presentations to some of our municipal conferences. Carl has worked a lot on the sales tax, which is, I know not property tax, but sort of adjacent in concept. And I know that you all have had sort of a long involvement with some property law jurisprudence that may be still continuing for you. And so we're up to speed on those issues as well. Yep.
Yeah, we've certainly been following the Supreme Court litigation that you're involved with and sort of the parallel Nome case.
Great. Well, let's follow that up with your experience with land use law. Tell us, if you can, and you can take a minute to think about this, tell us about a particularly difficult land use issue that you've managed hopefully to a successful outcome.
That's a little bit more my area than taxation. I don't have as big of a brain as our colleague Carl on that for sure. The thing about land use that's always interesting is it's very, very local. And so you're talking about somebody that's probably also your neighbor. And there are considerations, I think, maybe in land use disputes or zoning disputes that are beyond just what's in the code, what's black and white. And that, I think, is where having an attorney that you trust to sort of suss that out is very helpful. Our firm and our colleague Anna and I handled a very contentious land use dispute relating to setbacks from a waterway that ended up involving state violation, Army Corps violation, as well as a municipal violation. And we managed that through the administrative process and then to court. And we're able to resolve that through an attorney-led mediation to sort of save some time and money. But that issue in particular caused a lot of heartache because it was some very well-known players who were very involved in city projects. And so it was beyond just what's in the text. We've helped clients manage, the land use appeals through the planning commissions or their similar counterparts up through city council and assembly meetings where those issues percolate up. And then we've also advised clients who are private entities working through the land use and permitting process, so we're familiar with both sides of that, I would say. Yeah.
Great. All right. Let's talk about how you see the borough attorney position itself. How do you perceive your role as a borough attorney? What do you feel is like the most important function of a borough attorney?
I think for me, and I'll let you answer too, I promise, getting to know a client well enough to anticipate what might happen at a meeting, sort of minimize the pop-ups, which I know we all probably just, maybe somebody here likes the pop-ups, but I think most of us don't. So spending time cultivating a relationship so that people can think ahead about how you might help, and then maybe anticipating those things on behalf of your client as well. There's always stuff on the agenda, but sometimes if you're pretty experienced and get to know your client well, you can see between what's on the agenda and what might actually read in as a problem at a meeting. And I think that's maybe the most important skill. It's a soft skill, but the most important skill.
I'd say my personal philosophy towards that is about helping you achieve your goals. A lot of people think of lawyers as the people who you go to for permission and they say, no, you can't do that. And I'm very much in favor of trying to understand what your goal is as a borough and helping you achieve that, and not just saying, no, you can't do that unless it's like plainly illegal.
So, talk about yourself. What qualities do you possess then that make you feel like you'd be a good borough attorney?
You want to start?
I can start with that one. I think an analytical mindset, a problem-solving mindset, and, sort of a genuine curiosity and a love of learning. You don't get into this job unless you enjoy the fundamental aspect of it, which is learning new things and solving problems. And I think working with clients, especially public entities, you get a lot of opportunities to apply your brain to new questions and new applications of law and code. And that's personally why I enjoy it.
I agree with Jackson. I'm always curious to learn something new about a problem and help find a solution. I'm also a little bit of a people person, and I think you would find that a lot of the attorneys at our office are, even our tax attorney, which maybe is a rarity. And we really are eager to get to know and understand our clients so we can sort of develop a relationship. And we hope that when you call us, you're not giving a deep sigh before you pick up the phone, that we can have a relationship that's functional but also personable. And I think that's a pretty important quality in a firm and in an attorney that you're going to be spending a lot of time with.
What do you think? What should be the relationship between the borough assembly and the borough attorney?
We hope our clients are upfront with us about the issues they're facing and don't feel afraid to bring up a question or ask a question. And in that regard, communication is very important. We've found FaceTime is important. I mean, Zoom is great because you can actually see people and it makes it easier for all of us to get to meetings. But especially in the beginning, we think FaceTime is important, and that's something we're very committed to, should we be lucky enough to work with the borough. And I think that will help cultivate a relationship where we have some transparency and people feel like they can pick up the phone. That always helps head off a problem.
And I'll just add one thing, which is, representing the borough means that we represent the borough, not individual people. And so one thing that I think is very important to representing clients like boroughs is keeping that in mind and, reinforcing that we're here to serve the borough as a whole, not individual stakeholders.
Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of context about how it works here. The Borough Assembly has 3 employees who report directly to them, the manager, the attorney, and the clerk. Based upon both council action and day-to-day requirements, the manager is often the one in need of legal services to carry out the direction of the Borough Assembly. It's also helpful that the attorney and the clerk coordinate as appropriate certain activities with each other too. So how would you make sure that your activities are coordinated between the manager and the clerk to ensure both good communication and addressing the priorities in a timely manner?
My experience has been that making sure people who need to be on the emails and copied with the memos, making sure you know who that is. And in most instances, it would be the clerk and the manager in almost all cases. I've also found it helpful to set up sort of regular meetings, check-in meetings. Sometimes it's easier and more efficient to do that on a one-time call than it is to field 20 emails. But we're pretty flexible. Clients usually know what's going to work best for them. So I wouldn't think you'd need to accommodate our suggestions. I think we'd be looking for you to tell us what's worked well in the past and give direction on how best to coordinate workflow and work product so that people who are needing to be in the loop are.
Let's see. Okay, the borough manager, the clerk, and borough department heads, when authorized by the manager, routinely consult with the borough's legal counsel, and they sometimes need a quick response to a question. So, how do you perceive the method of contact with you that you prefer, and in what amount of time could we expect an initial response to a question?
We've talked a lot about how we have a deep bench, but we don't want you to think that that means you're going to be fishing around between 24 people to find a response. We've found that it's helpful to have a single point of contact and then an alternate if that person's out. So for this particular work, we contemplate that that person would be me, and then we'd make sure that the question had a quick answer. I mean, if something's marked urgent, we will take it at face value that it is, and we'll be responding, within an hour or two. For time-sensitive matters, are happy to have you reach out by cell phone if it's after hours. We're monitoring emails when we know something important is coming up. We're good internally about making sure there's coverage for things that are unanticipated. If somebody who's the point of contact is going to be out, we're pretty practiced in that. And so we know for you folks, you'll have a more typical rhythm for regular meetings, but that stuff comes up. And so we would be sure to have a person and maybe a single point of contact and then an alternate person if something came up and I wasn't able to respond right away.
This next one, Jackson, I think you addressed a little bit, but I think there might be more you want to add. So let's say there are two stereotypes. The sort of attorney who tends to tell clients what they should do, and the sort of attorney who asks the client what they want to do and then figures out a way they can do it, assuming it's legal. I think we know which one most closely characterizes you, but if you want to expand on that, can you give any examples, maybe?
Yeah, I think, there's a difference between taking, the client's direction at face value, I want to do X, and saying, no, doesn't look like you can do that. And then, trying to understand the underlying goals behind that, maybe what might be motivating it, and some other ways to achieve an overall goal, even if the path that the client set out initially isn't feasible for whatever reason. And I think that's where our experience and our institutional knowledge with other municipalities and boroughs comes in, because we kind of know, we've developed sort of an instinct of different ways to achieve things that isn't just, black letter law.
Leslie, did you want to chime in too?
Well, I think that covers it. We're not.
Tell us which kind of stereotype you are.
We're not really no-stamp people. I mean, there's some things like you all can think of a circumstance where your attorney should be telling you no and not maybe. But we really are hoping, we're doing an awful lot of talking tonight, but we are probably better listeners than many attorneys out there. We want to know what the problem is and help you find a solution and not just say no. If we're saying no too often, people stop asking. They just do what they want without telling you, and that's not great either.
All right, we have a couple of scenarios for you that sometimes come up. Two borough assembly members call your office and tell you that they want an ordinance to prohibit certain activities. You know that the mayor and one or two of the other members don't favor such legislation, and you really don't know where the other members, where they stand. So what do you do?
Well, it depends on what the clients ask us to do. I think we would probably try to head off those problems first by asking how the mayor, the clerk, and the assembly members want to handle that. I would say it's not routine for us to be workshopping special projects for individual assembly members, and I get pretty uncomfortable when somebody asks me a question and then is suggesting I shouldn't talk freely about that with either other members of the body or the clerk. And so I think we would be very careful how we handled those requests if they were competing. Our job is to not help spring-load a surprise at an assembly meeting. It's to help people draft or craft legislation that works. But if we got the sense that somebody was weaponizing that, I think that would make us pretty uncomfortable, and we'd be looking for a solution to head that off.
Okay, the next one is you receive a call from the public that one of the borough assembly members is getting favorable treatment from a contractor who regularly does work for the borough but has no contracts pending. How do you handle that?
Oh, you guys are good. I was just saying on the way over, we were hoping for no pop quizzes, but here we are. I think, again, there's probably a point of contact that's most appropriate, and it may be the mayor, it may be the city clerk, but I think that you're reporting all of that information. If there's not something that strictly governs that under the ethics code or under the other sections of the code, I think you'd be wanting, the clerk's office most routinely would handle those sorts of complaints initially.
Yeah, it's generally not our practice to interface directly with the public.
Yep.
Kind of branching off of these scenarios, how do you approach facilitating discussions regarding legal issues as part of the decision-making process with the assembly?
That can be tricky. It is sometimes hard to know how much information is too much information. We know you have thick packets and you don't want an additional 20-page memo from your attorneys. And again, this is something that I think we would cultivate over time the best way. I always prefer to have, if there's a work session, if it's a big problem, or executive session, sort of high-level discussions in executive session. We have become accustomed to providing attorney reports ahead of time. Some municipalities prefer that. We try to keep our advice short if we can. We know you read a lot. We know you're more familiar with practices and the code probably than we would be right away, especially. And so just developing a rhythm on that, giving you enough information, but try not to be too bookish about it too.
I love 20-page legal.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
In that
But
case-
How exciting.
that's just
What an
me.
opportunity.
Just a couple more. The Kodiak Island Borough is required to have an attorney present at local court proceedings. Do you have an affiliation with a Kodiak law firm? And if not, could you establish one?
I think the folks I know who are on island have retired, but some of our colleagues do more work here, and I'm sure we could facilitate that. We're happy to. We're not looking to be territorial about some of that work. There's pragmatic aspects to that as well.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. What do you anticipate will be the most difficult legal issue for the Kodiak Island Borough in the next, say, 10 years? How would you address it?
I think we're seeing, and you will not be immune from this, revenue is a big concern, every level of government, and I would anticipate that will become more of a concern here, just like for some of our other clients, especially those who are coastal fisheries-related industries. I think we're seeing particular impact. So I would anticipate it's revenue-based challenges. Do you have a prediction, Jackson?
I think energy is going to be a problem too, and maybe not so much directly a legal issue, but I think there will be legal components that come up with the changing energy landscape in Alaska that have impacts on Kodiak too.
This next one's kind of related. What do you consider the most pressing issue facing small municipalities?
I mean, I do think it's sort of the same answer.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it has different features, but as belts tighten for businesses, I think you'll see more pushback on things that affect their pocketbook too, related to taxation, maybe zoning, planning zoning restrictions related to that as well.
Let's see. Do you have any questions for us?
There's something not one. One, it's not particularly a question. I just wanted to mention that, like all Alaska statewide firms, we do have clients on island, and we noted in our response that there are a couple in particular that, while there aren't any current conflicts, I just wanted to make you familiar with the process we use when we're looking at questions related to that. For all of our clients, we check if a new matter comes up to make sure there isn't a conflict, and if there is, we do our best to get waivers to be able to continue the work. But related to taxation, that might be the one particular place where you'll see law firms having those issues pop up from time to time. And again, there's nothing particular that we're concerned about today or that we have a conflict on today, but I just wanted to mention that since we'd put that in our response. In the event you had further questions about it too, we'd be happy to chat more.
Thank you. And is there anything else that we haven't addressed that you would like to tell us about the service you could provide for us?
One thing I wanted to highlight is in our response, we noted that we would be happy to be here in person as often as you'd like us to be. I do think that's important, and I know we all have kind of gotten used to remote participation, but especially as we build a relationship, that's something we prioritize. And you'll see in our response that we have committed to providing travel here at least 5 times a year on our dime. And so we want to facilitate that relationship. We really do cultivate what we hope are very long-term clients. And so we have a number of attorneys at our office who have the skill set to do this work, and we're hoping that you'll find a personality match that's good for you. And if it's not one of these 2 faces, there are other folks that might be a good fit as well. So feel free to look at our website. It's very newly updated, very pretty, and has more information on some of our colleagues that didn't travel today.
As a member of our marketing committee, I can second the comment on the website.
All right, well, Leslie and Jackson, thank you so much for coming. We'll have a week, I think, to kind of deliberate, and we'll have an executive session next week to talk about it. But thanks again for making the trip down.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, do we need a break? Yeah, all right, we're going to take a 3-minute break as we transition to our next agenda item. Once again, thanks to Max, Leslie, and Jackson. Appreciate it. Okay, up next is a health facilities procurement process discussion, and I think we'll let Seema start us off.
Thank you, Mayor. During recent meetings at the Healthcare Facilities Advisory Board, concerns have been raised regarding project management, and in particular, the alignment with the current lease between KIB and PKIMC. Most notably, at the September 22nd HFAB meeting, concerns were expressed that the current process may not align with the lease language and KIB Code Chapter 3.30, Contract, Purchase, Sale, and Transfer Procedures. As a result, direction was given to research historical KIB-managed projects, contracts, and related documentation, and to present this information to the Assembly for discussion and the development of a path forward. There are two issues at hand here. One, the lease and whether the project should be considered a capital improvement project or a major maintenance and repair project. Payment of the project is affected on both sides for that decision. And two, procurement issues between KIB Code and PKIMC's single source bidding based on their qualification requirements. Project Manager Cody Allen, who put this packet together for you, is here tonight to help work through this discussion.
All right, thank you, Seema. How would you like to go about doing this? Do you want to hear from Cody? All right, Cody.
Okay, so my name's Cody Allen. I'm the project manager for the Kodiak Borough, and it's great to meet some of the new Assembly members up here. Should have been passed out a flow chart. I'm going to give a shout out to Patricia Valero, who's our project's assistant. She's our graphic design guru and put that together. Essentially, that shows the best that we could come up with for the current approval invoicing process as it has been since I've been here. And there was also a letter dated October 22nd, 2025 in your packets. And as directed, I completed the comprehensive review of the project records to generate a timeline of historical projects managed by the Kodiak Island Borough on behalf of Providence Island Medical Center. I don't want to go over that whole lengthy letter, but essentially the key points are, based on the timeline, it appears that somewhere between October 20th is when Providence started taking over ownership of project management, and June 2023, the majority of the projects were taken over completely by Providence, with the exception of things that were still on the Exhibit B, which is attached, which is the renewal and replacement schedule, such as like the elevators and things, which the borough is still managing some of that project. So essentially, based on a review of the current and historical projects managed by either Kodiak Island Borough or PKMC, there appears to be inconsistencies in the proper use of the processes clearly outlined in the lease agreement. And a review of the renewal and replacement schedule Exhibit B, which was attached to that letter, does not show all the items identified for reimbursement, nor does it include many of the updated items that PKMC is currently undertaking as projects. Additionally, to the best of my knowledge, neither Kodiak Island Borough or PKMC has adhered to the identified timeline in Exhibit C, which is referenced in Section 20.5 of Contract FY 2018-02, otherwise known as the PKMC lease, to update the capital improvement plan. And so another key piece of information that we found in the procurement process on how we've started integrating the HFAB, which is in your flow chart, is that was agreed upon. There was an agreement in March of 2023 on one of the HFAB meetings, and again in May 28th, 2025. It was noted at that time that work had already begun on some projects because they were deemed emergent. And so based on the March 2023 discussion, it appears that all parties believe that emergency items would simply be presented to the Assembly by the manager for reimbursement. Unfortunately, that process was never formally established or documented anywhere we could find, nor does it align with the terms of the lease previously discussed. And so before you tonight, you are going to see quite a few items for reimbursement later on in the agenda, and I just wanted to give you the information ahead of time of how we got there. And I'm open to answer any questions.
And for the assembly, we also have Tyler Steele from Providence here, who I think could also help out. I see, is this a PowerPoint that's up here, or is?
So that's
oh,
a
okay.
PowerPoint that goes over the reimbursements that are going to be discussed. We can go
Wait.
over that first.
Well, maybe we'll take a look at these first two items that Seema brought up first while you're already up here.
Yep.
Two things, yeah. The first one is treating projects as part of a major maintenance capital improvement project. And then the next thing is the province's practice of procuring from single source. It does not align with our code. And so those are kind of the two things that are most pressing, I think, for us. So I'll open it up for assembly questions for Cody or Steve?
The procurement from single source, is there a reason that is happening?
I'll defer to Providence on that. Could I just point out a clarification I should have added? The major maintenance and repairs per the lease is anything under 25,000. Those are those thresholds. I feel like those are kind of important to note. And then if a cost to repair exceeds the 25,000 threshold because Providence failed to perform timely maintenance, then KIB also has the right to refuse that reimbursement. And we could also do the repair ourselves. And so I know sometimes that convolutes things, but those are the thresholds.
So I'm Tyler Steele. I'm the interim senior facilities manager at Providence currently. And the reason why we have decided for sole source is primarily because the contractors that we work with have master agreements, and the engineering firms that we agree with have master service agreements as well, that they work with us frequently. So contractors like Fulford Electric, who recently acquired Wired AK, and all their personnel and all their assets, they performed ATS replacements of over 30 automatic transfer switches at PAMC in Anchorage. And then you have contractors like Cool Air Mechanical, who performed the chiller replacement at PAMC in Anchorage, also over in Providence Valdez. They replaced boiler replacements. So we go to these contractors and use these contractors to do projects in the hospital because they're familiar with the healthcare environment. They're familiar with the infection control risk assessments that we use, the pre-construction risk assessments that we use in our processes. So that is the sole reason why we would like to sole source. And then also our general contractors that we use, Davis Construction being one of them. They perform several projects throughout healthcare industry throughout Alaska, and that helps with all of the infection control and running our projects on the general contractor side and keeping a seamless flow of traffic.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Oh, sure. And then Bo and then Dave.
So, as I think I'm understanding it, but just to clarify it so I am, sole sourcing is against our present borough code, and we're being asked to make an exception for the Providence Healthcare Facility. Is that how you see it, or am I seeing it wrong?
No, sir, I don't believe that you're seeing it wrong. I do believe that the relationships that we have with these contractors really make the projects easier to handle and more efficient. Not to say that local contractors cannot. That's not at all what we're saying. It's just the relationships that we currently carry with these contractors make the processes easier.
Yeah, Cody.
So a point of clarification, I guess, I have worked for Providence as a project manager prior to this role, so I have a little bit of experience with how they do things. We're used to design, bid, build through the borough. And so what the way that they manage a project is more of a construction manager, general contractor. They bring them on early in the design process and sort of value engineer it. So, and Tyler can correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially, say contractor X is helping them through this with the engineering team. They bring that contractor on ahead of time as opposed to it going out for a competitive method of procurement. But that doesn't necessarily mean they don't vet their contractors beforehand. They have their own internal processes that allow contractors to work with them in those long-term service agreements, much like we do with our engineers and architects. But just so you know, it's not, we're comparing like apples to oranges, essentially.
Bo.
Thank you. So I'm confused a bit with the terminology being used, sole source. To me, it seems you're referring more to your preferred vendor. My experience with procurement is sole source means that's the only entity or vendor that can provide that service. So is my understanding correct in that these are your preferred vendors, or is there no other options that you have sourced and then landed on the conclusion that they are the sole provider of that service or product?
No, sir. During our design process, we vet several equipment and what the best equipment that we can procure is, and we go through several vendors and we get provided engineering costs on what those vendors can provide and whether or not they're the best. And then also we use industry best practices to determine what is best for our facility. The 30 transfer switches over at PAMC with that AK wired installed, they are to be the best for what their job is to do, and that's automatic transfers during emergency power situations. So,
May I follow up, Mr. Mayor? Thank you. So I'm curious, is this process being captured anyway and communicated to the borough?
I believe that's what the HFAB was designed for. I was originally a member of the HFAB prior to this previous senior facilities manager and the Healthcare Facilities Advisory Board. We would start design on a project. We would present the project to the HFAB. The HFAB would tell us to go ahead, we're approved, not approved. They would ask us all kinds of questions to determine whether or not it was a good project to move forward. A case in point was the chiller project, or is the chiller project. We have a chiller that is functioning at maybe 35% currently out of its total capacity, which provides adequate cooling for the hospital. And this chiller project was brought to the HFAB. The HFAB said, okay, yes, start design. And we started design on it, and at every step of the way, we come back to the HFAB, and then they ask us questions, and then that is supposed to be brought to the ARB, which that was recently put into the system for the ARB to review design, ask questions, change things as they see fit, and then send it back to our design team, which then we bring it to the engineers, and we engineer it in a way that works for the borough, and you guys approve.
May I have one more, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
So I'm still, you didn't quite answer, I appreciate that information, but you just still didn't quite answer my question so are you capturing and communicating the process of identifying your preferred vendor in a way that the public has access to that? So when you're identifying your preferred vendor, it sounds like that has already happened when you're bringing your project or your phase of the project to the HFAB. I'm talking about when you're identifying what you're calling sole source vendor. I'm considering your preferred vendor. When choosing that vendor, the process leading up to that point, is that information being communicated to the HFAB or the borough in any way? Your criteria or the process, anything leading up to deciding on choosing that preferred vendor?
In my experience with the projects that we have started design on, we start the design and vendors are chosen through the design process. I could be mistaken, however, if I can get the answer and then I can provide it to SEMA or Borough Assembly members, I would love to do that for you guys.
Okay, great. I think that would be very helpful information.
Yeah, I've served on the HVAB, and I think I think Tyler's correct that the vetting process was not done during HVAB. They were brought to us. Yeah, Dave.
Thank you. A couple questions and observations, I guess, if you'll indulge me. Who owns Providence Anchorage, the actual building?
I believe that is owned by Providence.
Okay, and Providence Valdez?
That is owned by the city of Valdez.
Great, thank you for clarifying that for me. And I think that's probably a big part of the rub is Providence Anchorage, obviously being the largest campus and the kind of the hub for these spokes. You know, it's in their best economic interest to enter into a master service agreement, parts commonality. I get all that. But we, you know, we're beholden to the taxpayers at Kodiak who are being asked to pay for these, and we need a transparent process. I find design bid build to be pretty inefficient as far as project delivery methods go, so I appreciate the CMGC construct. I wish we could entertain that more in government contracts. You know, the vetting that Providence is doing is giving them economies of scale, but it's costing us in transparency at the public level, and that's pretty concerning. You know, and I think with that, you know, Providence is searching, you know, when Providence, as you said, the best, right? You know, state of the art, but generally with government contracting, it's state of the market. And I'm not saying I'm opposed, but I think there needs to be a much clearer process for this type of work if we're asking for the taxpayers to reimburse it.
I'll get you, Jeremiah. Just a point, Dave, and correct me if I'm wrong, Seema and Cody, but the money that is being requested to be reimbursed is not taxpayer money. This is the lease money that Providence pays to the borough, and that is what goes into the R&R fund, and it's that money that is used to reimburse for these projects. Jeremiah.
Thanks for coming in, Tyler. I'm just curious, are travel and travel-related expenses for your preferred vendors wrapped up in these amounts that you're requesting reimbursement for? And if so, do you have those dollar amounts for your preferred vendors' expenses?
I do. They are included on the invoices, and in most cases, the travel expenses that we do incur is between $5,000 to $10,000, depending upon the length of stay. For example, the trauma VAV upgrade that we performed, it was broken up in 2 phases, and it was $10,000 for a total expense. For the travel, lodging, for the vendors that we had come over from GMI. And then we also used local vendors such as Endeavor Electric to come in and wire up. And then we also used Bearing Industrial to do the plumbing for the VAV. So we try and source locally as much as we can. You know, with specialists like GMI, General Mechanical, they come over, they did the fire department work, they did the ice rink work, so we use as many vendors locally as we can, but we do have them wrapped up in the invoices. I would like to touch, I know you already touched on it for the funding, that is an enterprise fund, and we are trying to work within the constraints of the R&R so that we don't incur those additional costs to the public. And we are keeping that in mind as we bring these projects to the HFAB. And that way, you know, the public isn't going to, I mean, we live here, we all live here, and then that way the public isn't paying for these projects as best we can.
Seema.
Since we brought up the R&R, that is the fund that we would use also for maintenance for the entire building. It shouldn't just be only PKIMC's use.
Yeah, there's KCHC there and,
Right.
yeah.
So the old part, the new part, and KCHC.
Yeah. Dave, and then Bo.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge my misstatement there. I should have said public resources, not taxpayer dollars. I'm intimately familiar with enterprise funds, and it is still, public resources. And as it comes into the borough's coffers to then go back out through the R&R fund, it is a public resource. And every purchase that's made is made, as you said, as was pointed out, is a decision point that affects future purchasing ability and R&R, repair and replacement of, we know there's a huge price tag coming on this building as well. So I acknowledge the error, but my point still stands of I believe we need to find a process that just makes this a little more publicly transparent.
Bo.
Thank you. I'll just quickly reiterate, and then I have a question for Cody or Seema. It would be, I think, for the sake of transparency, I agree, the public resources here, regardless of it being in an enterprise fund. There's a lot of needs for maintenance and repair for that facility. I do think it would be in Providence' best interest for providing transparency to the public when you're identifying your preferred vendors, how you got to that process. I think that's where we have a huge gap in transparency there, where you're presenting that to the HFAB without anyone knowing how you got there. Could there have been a more economical vendor that can provide the same service with the same quality, that has the same history or customer base that you prefer with your selected vendor? That's an example of how the public could take issue with how you're selecting your vendors without giving us that information. So I encourage that moving forward. So for Mr. Allen, have any of these expenditures or upcoming, and this may come later in the agenda, so please let me know if I should just hit pause on this question. Since we become misaligned with the terms of the contract and how we're handling these procurement processes, is there any, we'll just call them red flags for any of these expenditures that we need to be aware of that we may need to act on in a timely manner?
So I think everyone's brought up some really great points and great questions. During the research, I went through pretty much everything with the help of a lot of other people at the borough to figure out if there was any expenditures or anything that were like out of the norm cost overruns. We started getting reimbursement requests. One specifically was a cool air mechanical invoice, and it was actually brought to our attention by a third party because it was for work essentially on a boiler pump replacement for boiler pump number 2. And the invoice was for $40-something thousand. Was it 32? 32,000. But $7,762.50 of that was in travel fees, which I think Assemblymember Jeremiah, you asked that question. And so we had a conversation with a concerned entity that was like, hey, that's work that we could have done locally that got outsourced, and we didn't keep local money local. I wasn't able to address that because we weren't managing that work. That's something per the lease that would have fallen under that $25,000 threshold without the $7,000 in travel fees that wouldn't have been billed to the borough. So I do agree that there is some room for improvement there. As far as we could find all of these projects that you are going to see coming down the agenda, they did go through the Architectural Engineering Review Board first. But that started in 2024, 2023 timeframe. However, and with that being said, there were some issues where we approved and paid for design at $143,857 on February 16th, 2024, for reimbursement for the SPD design to 65%. But on the January 22nd, 2024, so a month before the reimbursement request, there was an agenda item on the Architectural Engineering Review Board for the sterilizers and the essentially the same project to go backwards in design at 35% because and correct me if I'm wrong, because the team of Providence had decided that it was no longer a viable option to continue forward with that 65%. And so we were paying essentially twice for that design. So those are just things that I want to bring forward to the assembly as opportunities for improvement moving forward, and what kind of like phase gates or stopgaps we could put in place to prevent such a thing from happening, where we're approving something a month after there's a request for a redesign that's approved at an ancillary board meeting. Another example that we could find in our research was on the chiller and condenser concept, which we approved to 65% on July 23rd, 2025. And we pushed that forward because that's one of the items that you're going to see later tonight, because they had a critical need, a 35% operation, to get that long lead time material procured. But I think when we start using the term sole source, those are what we're really sole sourcing as parts and materials. So those are owner furnished goods, unlike anything that the borough would do. We have done it in the past. The Sergeant Creek Playground was an owner furnished goods project, which isn't unheard of, but you do risk issues with like warranties and things later down the road because you are providing a good for a contractor to install. And another example, when we were reviewing of an issue identified, I guess we could say, was on March 7th, 2024. When we have our discussions, they're at the ARB level, they're not accompanied with cost. And so when it's brought forward, like the chiller and the ATS originally, there was no cost discussions. So you don't actually see that true cost until you get to 65% design. And at that point, you're committed. There's not really any room for negotiation. And then the final example that I'll share with you, get to my tab here. Was the ATS replacement and the location. There was multiple chiller opportunities. It was like ABC. And so a key thing in the process that I find to be most convoluted, which that flow chart, hopefully if you see it, is a pretty busy sheet of paper, right? It goes to the ARB, then it goes to the HFAB in hopes of bringing things forward. So Patricia and I often stack those meetings back to back, so it goes right to the right to the ARB. As soon as we have ARB approval, we're bringing it right to the HFAB, so it's hot off the press. A concern with that is that process is that if it doesn't pass ARB, it's misaligned to HFAB. First concern, rarely happens. Worst concern, if there's a redesign such as we've seen with the SPD, HFAB has an idea of where we're at, and then ARB makes a change. If there's a direction for reimbursement, that is the root cause analysis that we conducted. That's what we found out for how that SPD process got to where it was, is that the HFAB continued on one path under the guise and understanding of that's where we were. However, ARB redirected based on information that was given. So without continuity across those boards, it's very difficult to articulate at any point in time. And I'm not a member of either of those. I just help out facilitating. So it's very difficult to keep them in alignment.
Yeah, Bo.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So what I struggle with this current contract or this lease and the upcoming lease, not only for this, but for solid waste and all of the other contracts we're managing. My ongoing concern, I know an outgoing member of the assembly shared this concern with me, as well as the absence. We have an incomplete staffing model here at the borough. I view all procurement and contractual management processes as the three-legged stool. So we have the procurement manager, which is what we're missing. We do not have a procurement manager for the borough. We continuously run into contractual issues where there's either error in execution, which is no longer a problem that we have a very well educated and experienced project manager, but these issues keep coming up as far as we have gaps or blind spots in our procurement processes, whether it's an ITB, an RFQ, establishing and maintaining contracts, following the letter of the contract or the lease. This is just coming up over and over again. It's opening us up to litigation. It's inefficient. It's at times costing the taxpayers or other resources unnecessarily. So in my opinion, a well functioning administrative stool in the area of procurement and contract management is you have a procurement manager who's responsible for developing the ITBs, the RFQs, identifying the need, taking the need from the assembly and the public, drafting that document in coordination with our project manager to make sure it's something that's executable and that can be followed easily by project management. And then the third leg of the stool is the borough manager. The borough manager provides general oversight and ensures that the procurement officer and the project manager have the resources they need to do the job. So we're missing, in my opinion, that very critical leg of the stool. And I think if we don't start paying attention to that and take it seriously, this is going to keep happening to us. And it's going to keep costing the borough money. It's going to add unnecessary work for our staff. I think this is a concern that people need to take seriously sooner than later. I look at, and I'm veering off topic here and I'll wrap up. We have a vacant emergency services coordinator. I think that funding should be reallocated towards a procurement manager position. We have plenty of resources to handle emergency management here. We have 2 fire departments, police department, Coast Guard resources, 2 borough managers. I think reallocating those funds to obtain a procurement manager would be in the best interest of the borough and our taxpayer dollars.
Seema.
I think Bo has a really good point. If we look at the lease and the way that things should go, and I'm not very good at it, but if we split up and made sure that these things started coming and we were managing them through project manager, we would absolutely need a procurement person in there to be able to handle that stuff. Then we could also be looking at what, per the lease, the hospital should be paying for themselves if it is something that is designed that is internal in the hospital, so that we can start doing the maintenance with that on our money. Thank you.
Anyone else?
If I may.
Sure.
So I would like to touch on a couple things that the assembly members have touched on. The lease agreement, as Seema said, it is an agreement between PKIMC and the Kodiak Island Borough. And inside the lease agreement, it states that the funding for the R&R should be an agreement between the two of us on what that funds are to be used for. So I think that you are correct in stating that there needs to be more transparency and more communication between our entities, and to make sure that the public knows how we procure and how we go about design of our projects. But I also think that the communication hasn't been there from the borough, from the borough and from the hospital. That hasn't allowed our projects to move forward because there hasn't been that seamless communication. Also, the SPD redesign, we were 35% moving to 65%, and we ended up landing on the fact that the micro phases that were going to need to take place to keep the operating rooms, the surgical suites, operational during that time was going to be too complicated. It was going to be too much, and we were looking for elsewhere in the hospital that we could move the SPD to the sterile processing department. And we have an unfinished space inside what we call the dungeon. That is our storage space. It's the deep dark of where things go to get stored. And it's an unfinished space, and it's unused, and it could be better utilized for sterile supply, other items throughout the hospital. So we viewed that as a way to go back, take a step back, and realize that it would have cost us a fortune, and I say us, I mean us as the borough and Providence, to do this project in the space, the existing space. So we went back to design to put something forward to the HFAB, to the ARB, that would be acceptable with the funds that are available through the R&R funding. Project management, I would like to touch on that. When we started the HFAB, the borough did not have a project manager. And so there was an agreement on the back end done by individuals that said, okay, look, you guys do the project management and bring it to us. We'll approve whatever communication needs to be, if that needs be. And if it doesn't move forward, then it doesn't move forward. But it was an agreement that I don't have the communication for. I apologize, but that was done outside of, above my pay grade. But that was a communication between the old borough facilities director and the RESO director. So I just wanted to touch on that. That's all I got.
Thank you so much, Tyler, for that. Any questions or comments? What I'm hearing is that there's not one. So the HFAB is at the very, very beginning stages of looking at the negotiating the lease, so what I am hearing, would you like to keep tasking HFAB with going forward those lease negotiations, keeping in mind, taking a look at the major maintenance thresholds that that Cody was talking about, and then the second thing, have them clean up the, or not clean up, that's not the right, not the right word, but clear up the process for the preferred vendor master agreement sole source kind of issue, and then bring that back to the assembly, or is that something that the assembly wants to? Yes, Scott.
Well, I think that they should say they're interested in having a preferred vendor here and then tell us why. And let us look at it. And if we agree with them, then we'll give them our blessing. But to do it without communicating with us just doesn't seem to fit with our rules or the code.
Bo.
Thank you. Obviously, I agree with that statement. I'm comfortable with, the HFAB providing direction as long as resolution number FY 2023-20C is adopted. That would be my, it would be contingent upon that for me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be comfortable without Mr. Allen being
For sure.
part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Dave.
Very briefly, yeah, I think those are all reasonable ways forward, and I just want to, acknowledge that, I appreciate the partnership our community has had with Providence. My concerns about this one aspect of the process, notwithstanding, it's Providence provides a lot of invaluable services to our community, and I think that's important to recognize. Likewise, I'd like to kind of point out my concern and discomfort with the fact that 2 years later, the Assembly is just hearing of a handshake deal between staff members done not under the Assembly's purview that's voluntarily gave away project management. I don't think that was a decision that was made at the appropriate level. And so, I think an additional discussion about oversight and accountability may be warranted in the future.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Seema or Cody? Yeah.
I just wanted to make one point clear, and I believe I understand the tasking and the request of more clarity and transparency on Providence's side and gathering that information. But I do want to point out that a lot of the projects that are going to be presented later on in tonight's agenda, they're kind of like the horses are out of the stables. And so I would hate to see our community suffer from the sins of our past, so to speak, because Tyler and I work extremely well together, and we've I've known him since I moved here, right? And so I would just really hope that from the bottom of my heart that we make good decisions on these ones, and then maybe we could have like a clean break and a start fresh. But
All right, thank you. Okay. I think we have, thanks again, Tyler, for coming. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, well then let's move on. We'll make sure that that direction gets sent over to HFAB, which has some new members. We'll have new members coming up. All right, so we're going to move into packet review now for the regular meeting on November 6th. The first item up there is a proclamation supporting Operation Greenlight for veterans. That is a proclamation there that we'll read into the record next week. Then next we'll have a public hearing on ordinance number FY 2026-11, amending various sections of Kodiak Island Borough Code Title 17 zoning related to child care facilities. Start off with Seema.
Thank you, Mayor. The Planning and Zoning Commission at its regular meeting on September 17th, 2025, voted 4-0 with 3 members absent to approve Resolution FY 2026-006, which forwards a recommendation of approval to the Assembly for amendments to various sections of Title 17 related to child care uses. Based on concerns expressed by community organizations at the Borough Assembly, as well as general concern about lack of child care uses within the borough, the Commission conducted 3 work sessions on proposed code amendments. The current zoning regulations limit daycare or child care uses to urban neighborhood commercial zoning district, the rural neighborhood commercial zoning district, and retail business zoning district. Current child care facilities do not exist within those zoning districts. Community development staff obtained a list of current child care licensed facilities within the borough to determine current zoning of properties, while also looking at the intent of each zoning district to evaluate the zones that best fit the different types of child care uses. This code amendment was developed based on State of Alaska license requirements and best practices as discussed by many different organizations such as the American Planning Association. The proposed ordinance provides definitions related to child care, including definitions for child care facility, in-home, and child care centers. And Community Development Director Chris French is here to answer any of the questions that you might have.
Thank you, Seema. Any questions for Seema or Mr. French, Director French? Okay, all right. Moving on. All right, consideration of the calendar, new business. First up will be the election of the 2025-26 Borough Assembly Deputy Presiding Officer. Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly. The code dictates that annually at the November meeting that you're supposed to elect a deputy presiding officer. So the duties of the DPO includes presiding as the chair in the absence of the mayor and perform other duties assigned by the mayor and Assembly. One of the other duties of the DPO is coordinating the evaluation of the clerk and the manager. And also, there will be times that you will, in the absence of the mayor, if there's ceremonial activities in the community that you may be asked to attend. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. You will be also attending, although it's not required by code, you may be asked to attend agenda setting also. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Nova. And it's my intent as the previous mayor, what Scott did is to make sure that the DPO is included in the agenda setting sessions. I think that's really important for the DPO to be the voice of the Assembly in those meetings. I found it very valuable. So Any discussion or questions? Or Scott?
Are we nominating?
No, that's next week. Next
Oh.
week will be the nominations. But any questions about the position or the duties or? Okay. Next up is contracts. Contract number FY 2026-23, Kodiak Island Borough Facilities Contract Rebid with MK Enterprises LLC. And this, Seema.
Thank you, Mayor. The previous Kodiak Island Borough Facilities Road Maintenance and Repairs contract expired in 2020. With all other road areas, or road service area contracts being updated, the manager directed staff to issue a similar invitation to bid for the KIB Facilities contract. Staff issued an invitation to bid for this contract on September 18th, 2025. The ITB was advertised for the designated 3 weeks in accordance with KIB Code 3.30.040, and bids were due by October 20th, 2025. A mandatory pre-bid meeting was held on October 6th, 2025, with 3 contractors in attendance. At the bid opening, staff received 2 bids packages. After verifying that all calculations on the bid forms were accurate, staff determined MK Enterprises is the apparent lowest responsible bidder. Project Manager Cody Allen is here to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, questions, discussion? Yep. Oh, okay, Bo?
Sure, just curious how the meeting went. This was a fairly contentious issue initially when the veto landed. I won't speak to that for good reason, but yeah, how'd the meeting go? Were they, well, I guess let me rewind a little bit. Were any notable changes to the bidding process, and how was the meeting received from the bidders?
So significant changes to the overall bidding process and contract. Due to the likeness of the work, we weren't legally allowed to, per the attorney's recommendation, to bid it the same way. So this is what is often referred to as a bridge contract in procurement. And so we just bid a short-term bridge contract, and these are lump sum per occurrence modalities for payment there. So instead of a time and materials, we will be paying a lump sum per occurrence. It was well received by the 2 contractors that participated, but we only did have 2 as opposed to 3 the last time.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
Thank you. When this is all said and done, are we going to spend more or less than we would have on the first bid?
That is a great question. We did use estimates that were requested from the previous, plan of correction for the bidding. And I believe we estimated it to be somewhere close. Let me pull it up. I want to give you accurate numbers here. It's a really great question. I was not prepared for that.
Sorry, I should have emailed you in advance. That was a rookie move on my part.
Okay, that keeps me on my toes. So based on initial estimates, and I don't want to share these numbers because obviously we don't know what we're going to get. It's largely dependent on snow. It's a lump sum, so if we have a really bad year, if it was last year, we're going to make out, right? We had no winter. But it potentially could cost more, but it isn't a not to exceed. It is not a not to exceed contract, so it could cost us more going with this type of procurement.
Okay, all right, thanks, Cody. Looking at the next contract number FY 2026-34, a 1-year contract with Matson Navigation Company for recycled metals shipping. Seema.
Thank you, Mayor. The borough's previous contract with Matson for recycled metal shipping services concluded on September 30th, 2025. Following the contract's expiration, Matson contacted the borough to propose a new 1-year agreement. In response, staff reached out to other local shipping companies to obtain competitive quotes. Through this process, staff learned that the borough would be required to provide its own open-top containers for transport rotation. However, the borough does not currently own such containers. When we look at the new proposed contract with Matson for FY 2026, there was a change in the cost per container. There's a new container rate, and we must ship at least 15 containers in FY 2026. If the borough ships 30 containers like we did in 2025, the total cost would be $63,810. Project Manager Cody Allen is still here to answer any questions that you might have.
You wore the right jacket. All right, questions, discussion? Okay, all right, let's moving on. Resolutions, resolution number FY 2023-20C, amending resolution to add the Borough Project Manager as a board member to the Health Facilities Advisory Board. Seema.
Thank you, Mayor. The Health Facilities Advisory Board meetings are regularly attended by the borough's project manager. To ensure consistent participation and enhance the effectiveness of project discussions, it is recommended that this position be formally designated as a regular member of the board. This recognition would allow the project manager to actively contribute to their technical expertise and insights during the review and deliberation of projects presented to the HFAB board. Project Manager Cody Allen is here to tell you why he wants to be on the board.
Should we let Cody speak first? Okay.
So yes, that was a request, only because I'm often asked on the record to speak at said meetings, and it doesn't really carry any weight. And knowing that I'm only supposed to be speaking during citizens' comments and such, so.
Yeah. I endorse this one too, but any questions? Dave?
Not so much a question, but an observation. Seeing this this group kind of morphing into what I think the final end state should be, what I would say is that, as we saw tonight, there's a lot of improvements being made to our processes, a lot of improvements coming up. What I personally would like to see in a couple of years is this advisory board sundown, and we go back to having Cody as our project specialist, project management specialist, being the borough's point of contact for these issues, working with the same borough staff that are identified as members of the board, and then bringing the assembly as a whole, the projects for evaluation and review. Fully support the board in its current model, because I know we've got that work to do, but I'm hoping within a couple years, we'll start to see that board to be a bit duplicitous.
Bo?
Just thanks to you, Mr. Allen. We appreciate your participation there. I know you have a lot to say, and then being smooshed into was it probably 3 to 5 minutes window doesn't do anyone any favors. So thanks for lending your expertise to that group. We really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Cody. Up next, ordinances for introduction. Ordinance number FY 2026-12, amending Title II, Administration and Personnel, Chapter 2.125, Architectural and Engineering Review Board, Section 2.125.030, Qualifications. Seema.
Thank you, Mayor. Much like the resolution we just heard, this is for the Architectural Engineering Review Board. Meetings are regularly attended by the borough's engineering and facility director when that position is filled, and the project manager. To ensure consistent participation and enhance the effectiveness of project discussions, it is recommended that these positions be formally designated as ex officio members of the board. This recognition would allow them to actively contribute their technical expertise and insights during the review and deliberation of projects presented to the ARB.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments about this one? This one surprised me I'm surprised that they weren't already ex officio members on the ARB. So, Scott.
Do we know if the city has a member on the Architectural and Engineering Review Board?
A staff member from the city?
Well, they have an engineer too, don't they?
That position's been vacant for quite some time.
Yeah,
Oh.
there isn't. It's just a school superintendent, a school board member.
And then we have a representative for Providence,
Yeah.
typically on there as well.
Oh, I thought they had hired Matt Holmstrom, who lives in Anchorage and comes down as the engineer.
I believe Matt's tried to retire many times, but he keeps coming back.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other items. Review of the State of Alaska Alcohol and Marijuana Control Office Retail Marijuana Store License Renewal Application for High Rise LLC, doing business as High Rise LLC, license number 20113, combined renewal notice for 2025 through 2026 renewal cycle. And this is Nova.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We have released the packet on Monday, and the original recommendation was to, there were concerns regarding the number of incidents that were noted in the trouble reports from the Kodiak Police Department, as well as there was a fire safety concern related to the fire code violations and issues with the building sprinkler system. However, we have received information yesterday, and the information is in the supplemental information in your work session packet at the very bottom. So this is the practice of the borough. Once we release the packet on Monday, any additional information that we gather pertaining to items on the agendas, we attach them in the supplemental information in the packet. We will update the information on Monday so that you will have a more accurate packet for this item on the agenda. So the fire marshal said that they have conducted a fire inspection on October 29th. Violations were corrected and steps have been made to fix sprinkler system. Due to shipping, some items are on order still. Install will be verified in a follow-up inspection within 30 days. At this time, Kodiak Fire Department, the Office of the Fire Marshal, is dropping protest of AMCO renewal for High Rise. So there's that information for you. We also have contacted the Kodiak Police Department and asked for clarifications regarding the incidents that occurred in that establishment to give you more information so that you are better informed when you're making your decision. Those are in page 2 of 4 of the supplemental information. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We have given you options. You can either move to voice non-protest or voice protest with conditions, or voice protest, just protest it. So those are the options that you have. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Nova? All right. Next, mayoral appointments of assembly member representatives to different boards and committees. Nova?
Yes, these are the annual appointments of the borough mayor of assembly members to different committees, boards and committees. So after the agenda summary there's a list that came from the mayor of his appointments to the different boards and committees. We do have 3 boards there that we may need to discuss as the terms on those boards are about to expire. Those would be the Cook Inlet Regional Citizens Advisory Council, Swampsea Board Seat, and the Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council. Maybe we should discuss those at the beginning of the year next year, since some of you have noted interest in those boards. So maybe that's something that we can place on the agenda for discussion. I noticed also that there's no interest in serving on the AML board, so we won't be scheduling that on the November 13th agenda. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions or refer you to the mayor who made the appointments.
Yeah, I tried to get at least two, I think, from everybody's top five. It's a little difficult when I think six of you chose the Lands Committee as your number one, which I think is great, actually. But but I think everybody has three, and I had sent Lena a couple of names for the appointments to the bodies, Cook Inlet and Swampsea. But I think that's those are appointments that kind of need to be voted on by the assembly. So I am more than happy to take a look at those at the beginning of the year. And so that we have new people in place. And then I know that Amy will probably have some things to say about the Prince William Sound, RCAC, and she's been serving on that for several years now, I think, at this point. That term doesn't start until May, so we can have a good conversation about who can take over for that one, or if we decide to keep the manager on that one too. And then I think we went through this last year. The assembly, you can, if you would like, you can certainly propose amendments to the list here, and if you want to give all of the assignments to Scott Smiley, then that is entirely up to you. But yeah, that was kind of my thinking there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if
Yeah.
I may, if you are thinking of doing something like that, would you please let me know ahead of time so I can give you some procedural guidance during the meeting in your guidelines? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, declaring a seat vacant on the Fire Protection Area Number 1 Board, previously held by Craig Dagan. Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly. We have received a resignation of Mr. Craig Dagan on the Fire Protection Area Number 1 Board, and the resignation is actually effective October 4, 2025. But the code requires that you vacate the seat, and so I can start advertising for the seat. I need to advertise for 2 weeks in a row and accept applications, and then the applications received will be given to the Assembly. Any fire protection, any service area board appointments are made by the Assembly. The Assembly appoints to service area boards, not the mayor, just an FYI. Thank you.
Questions for Nova? All right. Moving on. Authorization for the borough manager to reimburse Providence Kodiak Island Medical Center. Here's the first of four. That's right. For the permitting, construction, installation, and closeout of distribution panel 6, DP6 replacement expansion in the amount of $121,000. Does it make sense to SEMA, Cody, the Assembly, to just talk about all four of them all at once instead of, okay. If that's okay with just go through them all right now.
Absolutely. Tyler has a slideshow that he'd like to show you first if we...
Yes, please, yeah.
Good evening again, Assembly members. Oh, no, it's not going to work. There it goes. Topics of the deck. This slide deck is R&R budget review, electrical distribution panel project 6, chiller replacement project, and the RO and steam generation project. Current and historical encumbrances. PKMC sterile processing department renovation project. We have started design on this project, and we have had to step back from that because it doesn't fit within the R&R funds currently. So we are stepping back right now to allow other priority projects to take place, namely the PKMC air handler rebuild project of number 1, the number 1 air handler, the RO and steam generator system replacement project, which we have new guidelines that we have to meet, the ST 108 guidelines, which are so fun and magical, that dictate how our sterile processing needs to take place within the sterile processing department and how we deliver clean steam. So that's why that project is in place. The ATS project, as you know, we've presented before, they're failing, they're obsolete, they cannot be worked on. Parts have been purchased in the past through eBay just to make them function. I myself, I'm the I'm the interim senior facilities director now, but I was the facilities supervisor, and I was having to, during generator transfers, I was having to reach into the cabinets myself with an arc flash safety PPE to transfer them by hand because the transfer switches were failing. So it presents a safety concern to members of my team and myself specifically because I don't feel comfortable letting my team take that risk. I have an electrical background. I was an electrician in the Air Force, so I feel more comfortable than my team does. The chiller replacement project, as stated, there's a 35% functional chiller, and this is why the projects are on our top priorities and why we're stepping back from the SPD renovation. This is a budget review. It shows the starting funds without the reimbursement that have taken place. So $6.2 million was the last number that we received from the borough, and planned removals from the R&R. I can't think of the term off the top of my head. For 2025, we're asking for $580,170 to move forward DP6, chiller, RO, steam, ATS, and the air handling unit projects collectively so that we can move to 100% design, the construction administration, closeout, and permitting for these projects. In 2026, the chiller, we're asking for the $1.1 million needed for a long lead procurement. The chiller is a 40-week procurement, and if we don't procure this chiller now, ahead of time of the project completion, we miss a shoulder season for the project, and we have to wait 2 years to put the new chiller in, which causes more issues for me maintaining temperature, humidities throughout the hospital, in our pharmacy departments, in the surgical department, and it'll end up affecting how many surgeries we can do, elective surgeries and emergency surgeries. The next items that you'll see will be September 30th, 2026, in the amount of $2 million for the chiller. That's the installation of the chiller. And then the $1,358,760 for the RO and steam. That is the complete project and the installation of that project. And then the $500,000 that you see listed for SPD, 580, excuse me, that you see listed for the SPD, that is the procurement of the AMSCO 400s, like for like. What that means is that the existing AMSCO 400s are over 30 years old or approaching 30 years old, and they're at the end of their usable life. And because we're stepping back from the SPD renovations, we would like to procure these 2 sterilizer units, which are like for what's existing, and will allow us to continue to provide surgical services here in Kodiak. And then we go all the way out to 2027, where you have the installation of the air handler and the RO steam projects. So we have tried to space these projects out throughout the next 2 years so that we're not hitting the R&R fund all at once. And like I said, stepping back from SPD renovation and pushing that out farther. In 2028, you'll see the collective $3,560,000 for future projects. That's the roof repairs that is on the 1978 and 1968 original building. Currently, we deal, when the wind blows the correct direction, we deal with 7 to 15 leaks throughout the facility that land on the red iron and roll throughout, and we have catch basins in the ceiling grids that we, on a daily basis, like the storm that we're having currently, we go through every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, empty the catch basins to keep them from ruining the infrastructure surrounding the envelope. So that's the roof project. Dehumidification, I'm currently on a design and construction team doing that on the back end. So this will likely come off. I'm hopeful that it'll come off, something that Providence can improve on our own with the installation of the new chiller, because currently the chiller's operating, like I said, at 35%. And that's what the pharmacies getting their cooling from. So if our chiller goes back up to 100%, we'll provide adequate cooling, and we can bring the cold air down prior to the pharmacy, which will bring the humidity down. Moving on to the fire alarm, HVAC controls, fire sprinklers, and the fire sprinkler systems. These are all projects that need to be done eventually. The fire alarm system is aging. It's still usable. It's still a perfectly usable. I deal with it every day. It's still usable. However, it's not a point addressable system, which helps and aids the fire department when they respond to calls, much like the call to the SPD when a faulty heat detector went off. It just said Zone 9, second floor, pharmacy. Well, that causes us to respond to the pharmacy. I say us, I mean the facilities team and the fire department. When we have somebody meet the fire department at the front of the building, and we respond to the call, and it causes confusion. So that's why that project is on there. The HVAC control system, we currently have the Niagara 2 system. It's a Johnson Controls installed by CCI, who was acquired by Long Building Controls. I'm sure the borough is aware of Long Building Controls and that. However, it's an antiquated system. Even the Long Building Controls, Curtis Hoffman and Greg Miles, I believe that's his name. He has stated that it will need to be upgraded because the current system is obsolete. It just doesn't work. So we have the failing systems, and then the sprinklers itself in the 1978, 1968 edition, there is code compliance that requires after a certain amount of time that we replace these sprinkler heads with new sprinkler heads to swap them out. Here is our project listing, the descriptions. You've all seen these, we've talked about them. The DP6, the current total project ask is $121,000. That is installation, design, and I'm not sure if it's been explained, the reason behind DP6, but the panels, the main distribution panel, and the other distribution panels are at their capacity. We don't have enough capacity to support the new chiller, the new air handler, and the infrastructure that's coming in. Their power requirements are much more than what they were back when they were originally installed. So that's why this project is on there, to help support future projects. And it leaves roughly 223 amps left over after the planned projects that we have, so it allows for future growth. Next on the list is going to be the, skipping over the RTU unit, it would be the air handler unit, moving from 65% to 100% design and to order long lead materials. Based on the spreadsheet that was shown before, like I said, we'd like to spread these out to stay within the confines of the R&R funds. Our top priority projects as Providence is the DP6, the chiller, and the air handler. Then comes the automatic transfer switches, then comes the RO and steam. Does anybody have any questions about this before I move on? Because this is a whole lot of information right off the gate. Okay. So item C1, approval for 121,000 for DP6 permitting, construction, installation, and closeout. Total project cost, as I said, is 121,000. It will support the RO, steam, and chiller and air handler projects. It's been designed to 35%. We're looking to go to 100%. Item C2, approval of $111,454 for design completion, RO steam generation project. It was approved. The ARB approved the project to 65% design, and there are documents available through the SharePoint that Providence shares with the borough that can view these project designs. Cody, Alan, and Patricia, they have the access to these documents. Item C3 is the approval of $71,436 for the chiller permitting, construction, administration, and closeout. Funds have already been allocated for the 100% design out of 187,000, I believe the number was. 187,824. Those funds are still available to finish the design. We're asking for an additional 71,000 so that we can move for closeout, construction administration, and permitting. And item C for approval of the $1.1 million for chiller procurement, the long lead time item that I was speaking of. This is the reason why behind it, and we have worked with Davis Construction to go over the best options available for the climate that we live in and the climate that we deal with, and we landed on the York 179-ton air-cooled scroll compressor package unit, and it will be coated with an epoxy coating specifically for coastal environments to give it longevity and long-lasting life. And the Providence's intention to sole source the project to Davis due to their knowledge of the facility is due to their knowledge of the facility and prior PKIMC projects. As I stated before earlier in the meeting, we work with Davis for a lot of projects, and this is part of the reason why we're using them as a GC for the project. And that is my last slide.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate that. Questions? Yes, Jeremiah.
Not so much a question as a statement. I have a lot of concerns about the misuse of this R&R fund. I'm looking over some of these invoices while listening, and I'd asked about travel expenses and such earlier, and I'm seeing the line item on this invoice, but I'm just seeing a blank item, and it comes up as soft goods and intangible costs, for instance, on this last item at $393,634. In the interest of transparency and whatnot, I'd love to know those numbers on what was actually spent on travel and stuff, especially given the fact that Providence decided to go with a preferred vendor in this scenario when they should have been consulting KIB. Some questions come up for me in that regard. Seems there should have been a bidding process or something to that effect. Additionally, when I was reading over the lease and some of the other agreements that we've all come to terms with, to me, and I'm new to this, so if my colleagues need to correct me, please educate me, interrupt me. The way I read it, we're responsible for the building and the upkeep for the building. I don't read that we're responsible for your equipment. One of the things that you have on here is your AMSCO 400. That, to me, that has nothing to do with us. There's a few other items in there. I'm going to review it as most effectively as I can. But for instance, your reverse osmosis, that doesn't seem like a borough problem to me. And I want to make sure this fund is used appropriately. As Mr. Johnson said, it is a public resource, this money in that fund. And I want to make sure that we are using it correctly and we're not bleeding this fund dry. At the same time, I want to preserve the attitude of, working together that we have with Providence, but to me, I'm very much a save money kind of guy, and I'm uncomfortable with several of these expenditures.
Yes, Cody, yeah. I think Cody will help.
Yeah, so I just wanted to provide a point of clarification as a very astute observation. I can't speak to their expenditures because we don't see those on our end. I just wanted to clarify, these expenditures have not been made yet. So what you see before you is what they're requesting for reimbursement as to move forward with the procurement. But we do have, and what you'll see in your agenda items, I try to do my best on that fiscal impact this time to show like a theoretical drawdown of what our R&R budget information comes from the finance director, because it differs slightly from item number 2, or page 5 here. There is on 6/30/26, there's 1,085,926, which is a contribution that we don't show in our records. So when you look at your agenda statement, you're going to see a true drawdown that we see in our financial records based on encumbrances that have previously been made in the years as far back as 2023 that still have not been paid. Because the way that process works, much like the complicated flow chart that I shared earlier, we request reimbursement, then we wait till Providence conducts the work, and then they invoice the borough, and then we pay. So the payment can happen. We're just now working, Tyler and I, with finance to get these 2023, 2024 borough assembly approved invoices paid. So I wanted to be clear that these haven't been done yet. The decision's in your hands if they